Welcome to the sardonic portrayal of what we can expect in the next few years as American citizens. So let's take a look at how best to commit war crimes in the name of America.
Citizens of America.
People of the Florida Alliance.
You gotta move!
And the Western forces of Texas and California will be welcomed back to these United States as soon as their illegal secessionist government is deposed.
Your favorite Eldritch Horror here, bringing you a review of Civil War. So get your AR-15 and throw away those pesky Geneva suggestions. We start out with some journalists, clearly war-weary and jaded, with grim humor about them. They sit in comfort and luxury in New York City, discussing how big it would be to get an interview with the president, as the war will be over soon with the central government forces winning, of course. I mean, that's what the man on the radio says, so it must be true. Some people have accused this movie of wasting the talents of Nick Offerman. I, however, believe they utilized his voice very well. Throughout the movie, we hear him giving press conference after press conference. We hear him detailing the great victory of the federal government, and we hear him offering peace terms to the seditious forces many times. This should be everyone's first warning, a big red flag that things may not be as described, that the government may in fact be lying. We hear not much about the other elements of the country. We know that the Western Front is an alliance between California and Texas, and presumably the states in between them. We also hear about Florida and the Deep South being their own entity, whom neither cooperate with the Fed or the WF. Finally, we hear about non-combatant states such as Michigan and Colorado, where people, especially older people, refuse to even believe that the Civil War is happening. This is such a deliciously American quality and totally believable. Especially with the modern advancements in AI video, I would be highly skeptical to believe that the country is in an all-out war just a few states away. I absolutely love how devoid of answers this movie is. We're just getting started, and already there's so much room for speculation. The group of journalists decide to go on what is considered a suicide mission, as journalists are apparently shot on sight in the Capitol. Again, ironic that the side that is winning would take such drastic measures to suppress free speech. We get our first interaction with rural America when the journalists stop at a gas station. They are asked if they have a special document allowing them to fill up. They don't have it. Money is offered and laughed at since, once again, value has suddenly become exceedingly relative to location. The fuel is finally purchased after the offer is made to pay with Canadian currency. Smart writing. During this scene, the annoying child who is foolishly brought along does her job in advancing the plot through ignorance and wonder at the tragic spectacle of civil war. She walks down to a different part of the station where a couple of men are tied up, clearly having been tortured extensively. One of the men guarding the station makes lighthearted conversation about torturing and killing these men and is excited to be featured in a photo standing next to his prisoners. You see, this movie perfectly illustrates the dark reality of humanity. About 5% of the human race are psychopaths, and who exactly do you think comes to dominate a world of violence and chaos? And I do mean dominate, not just survive, but to thrive and to find a meaning in their existence that the civilized world could never offer them. This movie does a splendid job of showcasing the inherent psychotic nature of a civil war. Talking about psychopaths, here's one of my favorites coming right up. Jesse Plemons, the man destined to play every cold-blooded sociopath for the rest of his career ever since his portrayal of Todd in Breaking Bad. We meet this upstanding gentleman while he is filling a mass grave. I mean, they just don't make him like this anymore. The sheer commitment of discipline and will to murder all those people, dig the big-ass hole, and fill it with bodies? Bro is on his David Goggins grind set mentality arc, waking up at 4 a.m. and taking his creatine. He even finds time to grab some strangers off of the road and add them to the pit, since in his words, what kind of American are you? What a powerfully understated line, because remember, we have no idea and never find out what side this character is on. We have no context by which to prejudge this man. All we know is that he is filling a mass grave, and doesn't think twice before executing 2 Asian men for wrongfully answering the question of, where are you from? I mean, I don't intend to sound cruel, though I am an eldritch god of horrors beyond comprehension, but bro, maybe that was a good time to lie and not tell the nationalistic maniac filling the mass grave that you're actually from China. We have another enjoyable display of the chaos of war when the group is forced to stop and take cover from a man holed up in his rural house, sniping anyone he can see from his home. Yet again, another extremely believable American situation. Why is he shooting at people on his lawn? Don't know, don't care. And when the journalists finally discover that there are a pair of soldiers hiding in the debris counter-sniping, they laugh at the question of, Who are they, or who are they taking orders from? The spotter even goes so far as to say, we aren't taking orders from anyone. Someone is trying to kill us, and so we are trying to kill them. Like a crisp glass of water, this script is. We get a concrete answer for the first time when our group of journalists meet up with some of their colleagues attached to a WF army. They've learned that the federal forces have surrendered and retreated from Washington, D.C., abandoning the president and his personal guard of diehard soldiers and Secret Service. Now the motivations of our journalists change, and instead of seeking an interview with the president, they intend to simply witness the fall of the American government. And here we have, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best portrayals of urban siege warfare I've ever seen. Genuinely, whoever directed these combat scenes needs to be commended because they are exciting, believable, and brutal. The WS forces are shown fighting street to street through the Central Mall containing the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Capitol Building, eventually ending at the White House, which has been reinforced by what looks like a 30-foot tall concrete wall. Absolutely epic. Again, I love whoever was making these set decisions. The assaulting force makes their way into the White House, fighting room to room bitterly against the heroic last stand of many Secret Service agents. Like a modern Swiss Guard, we sometimes forget the role of the Secret Service fundamentally is to lay down their lives for the president. In the end, the satisfaction we get is simply seeing the president gunned down in the Oval Office. We still have no idea who fights on what side. No attempt was ever made to align political or ideological views of those in the movie with any existing partisanship. And I cannot express strongly enough how much I appreciate that. It would be too easy, lazy even, to wave your hand and place everyone into existing boxes. And in the process, the writers guard themselves from having to make creative decisions and stand by their work. Of course, the federal government would always portray themselves as the rightful rulers, and they would dominate the wartime propaganda. Of course, the American South would break away into their own bubble run by Florida and unwilling to cooperate. And while the Union of Texas and California confused a lot of people initially, due to their principled differences, my headcanon, which I think is quite reasonable, is that famine often follows close behind civil war. And once the overcrowded cities starved, the California countryside would firmly control the state, and those folks would happily join forces with Texas and other southwestern states. A proverbial struggle of the artist is the insistence from the world that you make declarations, that you define yourself, and it can feel often like a boot on your throat or a pit filled with spikes. I will not declare that my artwork exists in such a way that fits into your predefined narratives. You will accept ambiguity and even confusion if the artwork dictates. And you will not scorn work for its requirement of your engagement. I like to ask myself, what if? What if the untold story is this or that? I enjoy that. And if you're a consumer who simply doesn't enjoy that, then certain pieces of work are simply not made for you. I give Civil War a 19 out of 21. 6 out of 7 sacrificed cultists. The aesthetics and cinematography were fantastic, and the camera work following characters in the heat of the moment was impressive. It's difficult to retain comprehension and coherent video when desiring the outcome of a wide shot while in a third-person perspective. 6 out of 7 screams of the damned. I swear it's been 10,000 years since I've seen Kirsten Dunst, and she was great in this film. I can't even remember the last thing I saw her in, and that probably helps with the character since it feels like a fresh start. Similarly with Wagner Moura, who is absolutely awesome in Narcos, it was hard for me to recognize him as another character. However, the emotional impact was underwhelming. The young girl who rides along is of course a disruption and responsible for a tragedy later on. 7 out of 7 Tentacles of Cthulhu. As I mentioned previously, I admire writers who intentionally don't answer questions. Ambiguity is not an inherent flaw, quite the opposite. It's easy to think that we love great works like Tolkien for what they told us, but in aggregate, the time we spend with his untold stories will both outweigh and outshine. A good writer can tell a beautiful story. A great writer builds a world which hijacks our imaginations, planting seeds of fantasy that will bloom over a lifetime. Now, of course, I don't recognize Civil War in the same league as Lord of the Rings, but intentional ambiguity is a master's tool, and I applaud them for doing it so well. The 1 hour and 49 minute runtime went by quickly, and if we get a sequel, as studios are so happy to do these days, I hope that it does not attempt to follow any of the stories built within this film. Show me a prequel of Texas and California breaking away and uniting, or a film about the Florida Alliance and how the Civil War has gone from their perspective. We could see a series of films all taking place in a relatively small window of time from many points of view. Imagine that. So if you don't mind seeing a few war crimes, then definitely check out this movie. That's all for today, mortals.